Oh, hey,
There he is.
my friend.
What's up, man?
Yeah, I'm so sorry that going MIA occasionally. I have unfortunately severe ADHD. I get very easily distracted, and with that comes also my tendency to engage on all sorts of side quests, of which I had too many lately. And it's actually a thing, like people are not like it's not like out of sight, out of mind, but it's just like, I'm like, oh. So I'm like somewhere else. But yeah, I'm happy to see you. You're looking good.
Yeah, you too, man. I've seen you online. You've been busy. You're still doing your thing.
I mean, like I have no other, I have um no other option.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's been okay. Like I got a little bit, not overwhelmed, but also not surprised by the feedback on the community radio index. I'm obviously new that it's going to be well received, but I didn't expect it to be as well received.
Why?
Well, because, I mean, what did we do? We put together a web page on which you can, look at the locations of radios that we admire and we want people to listen to, which in itself is not the most radical idea. It's just nobody has really ever done it, which I found very surprising, which is
Right.
why we did it to begin with.
Yeah.
But we also launched without much of a plan in terms like, I mean, we know what we want to do next. We want to add a curatorial layer so you can not only create a surface area for the radio stations, but also what happens on the radio stations, because right now there's no central registry of what is in the archives, what are people doing, who are the hosts, who are the faces. So we knew we want to do that, um, and a couple of other technical, things that are just easy for us to do, and we wanted to say if it's all stable and it's well received. But the feedback was basically like, no, you're like now the central hub for community radio culture. Where are the spaces where we can connect and exchange? We want to talk, because ultimately what I found, I mean, it's very often like that, like even in Berlin, like promoters that kind of work in the same field, they don't really know each other. And then it requires me, to introduce 25-year-olds to each other that I think are hanging out. And I'm the one who's like, the external element. But it turns out I'm the one who knows everybody and they don't talk to each other. And the same thing is with community radio. There's a couple of networks, but they're very Eurocentric. There's like the occasional organization that got some European funding. So they are like, connecting people. But that obviously doesn't include people outside of Europe. And even within Europe, there's a network for like the British people, and everybody's like, no, we actually are kind of doing our own thing in silos, but we would love to know more about other people in the industry. And so, and then of course you have the communities that really, do it on the skin of their teeth, who basically, don't have access to infrastructure to just do it because nobody else is doing anything for culture in Hanoi or in Bandung or in, many of the Chinese radio stations I was talking to. And they obviously are disconnected from pretty much everyone. They just do their own thing. So now people are looking up to us. And the problem is it's just literally me and my friend Robbie and nobody else. So that is what I'm saying. I'm without a plan much, just because I'm also going on tour in 2 weeks to China, which is notoriously complicated to maintain anything social media related. I'm going to India and to China on like a 4 to 6 week tour. So I'm now also urgently trying to identify from the people that pinged me who's trustworthy enough that I can kind of onboard them immediately so they can like be supportive. But it's also a big decision because you're getting somebody in that you can't just, kick out, because we're non-hierarchical, which is why I also said in the bio it's currently maintained by me and Robbie. But it doesn't mean that it long-term will be, because we're also setting it up open source. Anyhow, these are all the things. So we went into this and now we are 24 hours later. We're like, okay, so how many hours have you slept last night? Not that many. Well, that's because, like, while we're talking, I had no time today. There's like about 80 contributions waiting for me to kind of get into the system, which need to be manually approved because people are notoriously bad at data entry, so
Right.
and so these are the things. But I'm very happy that it happened, because it needed to be done.
Yeah.
It's just and I don't want, there's no business model attached to this and won't be. This is not about that. Like, the business model is that Robbie, as I said, has this software that he would love to now, kind of get going, which is, the kind of content management software for community radios. So that might be, a thing. But it's somewhat overwhelming.
Yeah.
Because I also have a sense of responsibility, and the worst thing is like people who kind of claim a project and abandon it. And I tend to follow up on things that I promise to people, and
It's important.
Yeah.
That's why you're so well trusted.
Thank you. And I was just on a call with of course Malcolm and Refraction and all that. Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just talking to Malcolm and the team, because one idea with the IRL network is, of course, there's only a handful of community radio stations that are able to do what they do without much pressure, because their business is not radio. Their business is running a bar or a space or being embedded into a space. And I think a lot of venues don't realize the potential of being an infrastructural hub for that. So I was talking to IRL, so they might, within their network, facilitate the willingness of venues in their network to host, these stations, or, use their infrastructure to set up stations. So that's like the kind of cross-pollination that I think makes sense, but yeah.
I love it. I love it.
So
Yeah, I think the plan I wanted to talk to you about is taking this to another level with a business model, but same idea of elevating underground culture around the world, knowing that there's a lot of unique things happening in many places that are going, unseen and they're missed, and trying to elevate them. So, what we have been planning and plotting over the last couple of months is our go-to-market strategy. We've had this platform for a while. We continue to grow it. We're adding, new features on it now with the addition of sort of AI coding. We can improve the product pretty rapidly. But we need sounds. The infrastructure is, probably 75% there. There's some stuff that we want to add, but I think, for what it can do, it works. The business model has been, we proved it at a very small scale. So right now we are, just to remind you, it's a sample library that we're building from producers. They get paid per download. We split our subscription fees 50-50. And each time a producer gets a download, he gets a share of the subscription fees, right? Today, we launched payments in Q1. Q1, we paid 40 cents a download, which is 120x stream on Spotify. On half our revenue, which is like at the time was $45, right?
Hey, we got 16 euros of donations yesterday, so I know
Nice.
I know how to be happy about small numbers.
Yeah, but I mean, think about that. On $45, we paid 140x Spotify. And in this last quarter, we paid 68 cents per download, which is 227x Spotify. So now we're saying, okay, well, the business model works where we don't need 1 million subscribers to make this attractive. And we want to see if this model can scale. And so how do we do this? Well, let's do it city by city. So we hired a guy. He's gonna who works for. He introduced some bigger name producers, but he's very well connected to like New York City Underground. And we said, let's launch in New York City. Let's bring influential producers who are really representative of the city's sound and are influencing the sound, driving the sound. Let's give them a platform to be seen and a way to export their sounds to the rest of the world. You know, we will pay them for the sounds. They maintain ownership. We get this license to monetize and distribute, and they have this new economic engine that allows them to, you know, hopefully make more money from their music, release more of their work, and ultimately see and track who and what their music inspires around the world. And so let's do it in New York. We'll put, you know, 40 grand into this and see if, you know, we can really build, you know, visibility for these producers and, you know, help them build brand alongside ourselves as well. And if it works, you know, on a very small conversion, we turn 40 grand into 1,000 users on our platform. And that's about 100K annual run rate. ARR. And if it works there, then let's do it in Lisbon. Let's do it in Prague. Let's do it in, you know, Berlin. Let's do it in South America. Let's do it, you know, let's do it in other cities. Because again, like we know every city has a sound that are driven by local artists, but that culture right now is hidden. And we think there's a big market for it. And I think what you have just done is an example of that. So so that's the idea is, you know, we're gonna sort of bring this underground culture to light, you know, elevate it, float it, you know, for lack of a better term. And then you know, again, if it works, we want to repeat it really around the world. And so that's, you know, that's what I really want to talk to you about is like, is there a way for us to work together on this? You know, you obviously have the relationships, are in touch, I think, with the right producers, you know, and have the same belief that we do that, you know, underground culture is innovative culture. That's where all the interesting things are happening. You know, that's unique and that's exciting. And you see the value in it, and as do we. And, you know, is there a way for us to, you know, work together in the same capacity that we are working with this guy, Dro, in New York, where essentially you're making introductions, helping us, you know, sign content. We don't really sign artists. We're, you know, signing our content and helping give, you know, these emerging producers visibility and an economic engine that they can rely on.
So what were your, so how did he approach that in New York? Was like literally like a direct facilitating direct conversations with the right producers, or was this more, you know, was he doing, I don't know, studio sessions, like getting people
Both
together?
Yeah. So that's the idea is, and we're just starting. I just signed him on Friday, and so we're, you know, we're starting this. I've known him for probably 6 months now, but we started like really working together
What's
this
his
week.
name?
His name's Dro.
Yeah.
He goes by Drogenstein, but that's his last name. It's like Pedro Genao, Genao, I believe. Let me see.
Pedro Genau.
Pedro.
Yeah, Drogenau.
Genao. Yeah. Really good dude, solid dude. Came to us from, I don't know if you know Jesse Kirschbaum.
No.
He runs a new agency. He's been around Web3 stuff. I know him from Web3, and then it's him and his brother run this company called New Agency. And so I originally went to Alex and Jesse and said, you know, do you guys know Alchemist? Like, you know, thinking about who, if we put archive, you know, together of unreleased content, like who would drive the biggest, you know, bang. I was like, Alchemist would probably do that. And so they're like, we know Alchemist, you know, we know his team, you know, we know, you know, all these guys. And so that was how we got to Dro. But yeah, good dude. And, you know, he's, you know, what I was really excited to hear from Dro actually was that he was like, you know, I don't even really listen to hip hop that much anymore. Like I'm like a house EDM, like electronic lover now. I was like, exactly. And I was like, you know, if we're really doing this to this highest potential, we're giving visibility to the full breadth of underground New York City sound, not just one genre. Like there are hardcore kids that are going nuts. There's like emo, there's, you know, there's obviously a lot of electronic stuff happening there. But we want to capture what New York sounds like right now, right? Like that is the idea, not New York hip hop. It's what does New York underground sound like, and give that a space to be seen and visible, and for other people to be able to interact with those sounds. And so initially, our whole model has been, for producers, we give you a place to monetize your influence. You get to spread your sounds. The more influence you have, the more money you make, and that's interesting. You can see who and what your music inspires. But for to think about that on a city by city basis is really exciting too. Like, is New York City influencing the world? Is Mumbai influencing in the world? Like, how are sounds really traveling from place to place? Like, we will be able to see that, we'll be able to track that, we'll be able to report back on that, and make that all visible. And so the way that Draw is working is, we get two things from artists that we work with. We license the content, and then we get some sort of BTS of them like making, right? Like that's another important part of this. So to your question, he is considering, we have been talking about doing studio sessions and just bringing producers together, like maybe just like put a video camera in the corner and just like record it. And then we get everyone on camera, we see them, they can be seen, we can put that out for them, and give them the visibility that helps them build their brand. And we get to do the same thing through the affiliation.
You should, I mean, Float should be running. Give me a second, I just need to find something in my archive. Just need to find it on one part. So I post too much shit, man.
Is
like
that possible?
It's really like hard to,
you can't find it
to get into, into through my stuff. I was just looking for this young US American producer who's like legit one of the most talented American rap producers right now, and he's part of that Twitch producer generation, who basically has is constantly live on Twitch, but then because other producers get on the live stream or in the studio, they produce something, you have immediately communities around that beat because they witness how that beat is being written. And so that beat has already momentum and lore and desirability, and that is one thing that I think Float should corner, that way of not doing like BTS content, because
like live streaming.
That stuff it's great, for somebody who's also like now started to sell his videography skills. It's a great income stream. I do that too now as well, white label productions. But it's not what Float needs, because the culture that you're talking to is documented these days differently. So if you think about like the kind of media strategy, particularly for this like New York guy, set them up as Twitch streams.
Bet. I like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Set them up as Twitch streams, and then you get
that's all we need.
Yeah, that will be, and then if it's gets enough momentum, then you'll have basically also like a content printing machine, but also like a you're basically producing the stuff that you buy while it's baked. And
I
then
I think ultimately that's the direction I think this heads. Think about that concept that you just mentioned, combined with Anthony Bourdain, No Reservations, right? A global this is you, global traveler, touching down in scenes around the world, identifying what's hot, and putting that on a Twitch live stream.
Yeah.
I think eventually that's where I want to go.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
But that could be, I think that would be that could be a distinct feature of Float, where on the surface it looks like a media company, which it is.
Right.
But ultimately, that's just the surface layer towards audience, because you are running. What's the TV channel where you buy stuff, QVC?
Yeah.
Yeah, you basically, it's like a sort of QVC type of setup. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you really want to take it to the QVC level, imagine now that, on that live stream, the shirt you're wearing, the hat you're wearing, the earphones you're wearing, they all have a link. There's a store at the bottom that you can go and purchase all this stuff from.
And TikTok is trying to convince me that this is what I should be doing on my profile.
Really?
I mean, that's how most people make money on their TikTok live streams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a huge.
Really?
I mean,
yeah.
That's. I mean, in China they have mastered that. You've never watched one of these like Chinese live streams where they where the models change like outfits within 3 seconds, and then they do their poses, and then
I've seen them, but I'm thinking about something that's a little less in your face salesy.
I know. I know, absolutely.
Like, oh, that hat's dope. Like, I should be able to wear that. And ultimately, I've heard this from a couple artists now who are also thinking about, this line of like content where they're saying, my music's not really catching like it should. And, what I think is missing is like an overall world that I'm building. So I want to add visuals. Like, there's one guy that said, I'm making like dark, sort of melodic rap music that I think pairs well with like horror. And I want to make horror content, like a little horror series, but everything in that's shown in the video should be for sale. Like, I want to launch my merch line through this, or like I want to do, I want to have things that you're seeing in the video be purchasable. I was like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like, it's like a visual catalog. And if you're really trying to bring people into your world, then they should be able to dress like you. They should be able to, have the same candles as you or whatever, I mean, like, they should be able to embody the lifestyle. And I think that's, that's definitely a potential. To me, what it does is it serves for us and our purposes. I think we ultimately want to be a platform for artists to be able to sell stuff. Right. So, think about, okay, now the painting on the walls, you could buy like everything is artisan, is made by artists. And, again, if we're doing this on a global basis, then there's a lot of unique, interesting culture that's representative of a city that, right now has no way to be exported. The sounds are the first thing, right? The sounds are how we gather audience. And, you understand this perfectly. That the media is just the storytelling, the narrative for us to be visual. Ultimately beneath that is distribution for sounds. But once we build the distribution for sounds, we can build distribution for other artists, right? And who gravitate to this music, or who relate to this music, or who are, the music scene in DC and Baltimore is not just a music scene, it's a creative scene. A lot of different types of artists that are represented there, but they don't have the capability to sell their stuff. So I think we start with music. Music is the focus, but ultimately I think that's the potential over time.
By the way, to your artist who the horror stuff, which of course horrorcore is a thing. Never been a fan of that, like there's only so much murder fantasies that I can listen to, and most of that is already covered by my metal taste, because it's a little bit more, not as full on in your face. But a lot of artists confuse world building with aesthetics, and that's like a really, really big mistake. Adding visuals to what you do is not world building. It's, drapes, more or less complicated drapes. I'm going to send you here a link, which I think is the group that does the best world building right now.
Okay.
And
How
it
do
will
you- yeah.
not be what you expect if you don't know them.
Okay. How do you define world building?
Well, there's basically, three levels to that. On one hand is just a broadcast, which is traditional ways of communicating. Here's my EP, here's when it comes out. This is, me in my function as an artist in various kind of environments that you would expect an artist in. That can work, depending on your persona, depending on what kind of audience you have. Some artists are really well by just broadcasting, because they've built maybe, they've been around long enough, or they have an audience that's loyal enough, or they've built, enough of a lore around what they do already that people really pay attention to the broadcast because they've internalized the storytelling. Aphex Twin is a really good example of an artist that doesn't need to do anything. He has built 30 years of mythology around what he does that people have internalized so much that he just needs, to send a signal and people hop onto that. But they do it also really smart. Remember, one of his campaigns was leaving a USB stick with 200 unreleased tracks in a toilet in London, and people found out, and then it went on SoundCloud, and then people had all of a sudden 200, Aphex Twin tracks for free because there were no USB stick in London. But ultimately, so that's broadcasting. That works only for very few artists. Storytelling is, of course, the next thing where you actually can, allow your audience to immerse in what you do. That is usually very often personality driven. These are artists who actually, break through the fourth wall of, I'm not just, an artist, but I'm in one way or the other relatable in the way I, tell what I do. It doesn't need to be, that artists talk this meme trope right now, follow me as an influencer with a limited vocabulary, it's hey guys, today you're gonna follow me to this, no, I don't want to follow you anywhere, fuck off, this is I follow too many people. so it's not like that, but it's a bit more engaging. That's storytelling, where you continuously engage in what you are about and why you do it and how you do it. And then the world building, that's already a bit above that. There's a lore, that people can identify. There's an aesthetic, of course, that's unique. There's a lore that is kind of meta-narrative, that is more than just, Warhammer 40K type of fantasy, but a narrative that people follow and that they can recall. And Boythrop is a really good example of that. It's a boy band whose fourth member is not allowed to enter the US because he's from India and he doesn't get a visa, So if you look at their videos and you wonder, why is this person edited in? It's just he's the fourth member, but he just can't participate in their career. And it's genuinely, endearing the way they've built this narrative. It's corny as fuck. It's but people, are really rooting for them, and they understand the story. So there's a world around Boythrop that they filled with life, and they don't need, now to kind of do the storytelling much anymore, because that's already, part of how the audience relates to them. And that's, the world building is already, aesthetic is not world building. That's a very literal translation of that. And anyone can have, great looking CGI videos, but they can also be anemic because there's nothing around it that connects emotionally to the audiences. So that's the advice that I would give this young or not so young person.
Yeah, it feels like, the thing that you mentioned that sticks out is for him to be explicit about this is our mission, or this is his mission, and this is what he's out to do, and bringing people on board so that they root for him. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what you ultimately want is like, I'm up against the impossible and I'm trying to do the impossible, and people want to join that journey. And then I think he starts to represent doing the impossible, and people want to wear his merch because of what that represents. It's not just I'm a horror fan. It's this guy's really trying to make things better, or innovate in a interesting way, or do something that he's not supposed to do, and then people get excited about that. Yeah.
But it's also a tough it's a tough environment, to operate for artists in with this type, of stuff right now. So there's also like immensely talented people who just miss with what they do, that 3-second attention window that TikTok and Instagram requires from you, and it just doesn't stick.
Yeah, that's why I think the best ideas are ones where like this happens at a collective level, not at an individual level, because then the collective can own a media channel and they can have a story, and they can it's sort of why I like what you've done. You know what I mean? I think it's a platform for talent to be seen around the world, and it's a huge collaboration. The better you curate those channels, the more value that you're creating for everyone on the channel and everyone who is consuming from the index.
But having said all that, so how would you how could you imagine a collaboration and like the kind of focus that you would, obviously my network is vast and ever growing, ever sprawling. I was was actually very surprised how that dub sound system video around that German song "Du bist gut genug," how far that traveled and who it actually swept into my network, including a lot of like hip-hop producers, because Kitsch Krieg right now, I mean, they are one of the few German duos that made like successfully broke through in the US, so they are now a blueprint. So of course people look up to what they do and who's affiliated with them, and I happen to be that at the moment. But obviously my network is also sometimes a bit more specialist than that, like the one advantage I have, I'm a generalist, but that means that I'm also, not in all the niches very deep, but in many niches, deep enough that I understand how to dig deeper. That's, I think, the best way to describe it.
I mean, I've always thought of you as you're a curator for curators.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you're welcome. I knew you'd appreciate that. But that's true. And I trust your taste. I know that, I trust your taste in people as much as I trust your taste in music. And I think, the way that we could kick off is, by understanding that your network is wide, is really just to, I wouldn't say restrict it, but confine it to like maybe a city. Like, is there a city that we can start with? Just like, we're doing with Dro in New York. Dro, same thing. He's got a global network. He knows people everywhere. I'm like, no, we want New York City underground sounds. Like, that's the place that I think, we want to pop off.
And it needs to be, you need to start with, like the go-to-market thing is if you own New York, LA and London, you already own more market than 15 of the biggest European cities combined, So
but, New York, I think is special. Is LA, London? I don't know. Like, what?
LA, I can't say, I've never been,
Yeah.
Like, so
London,
obviously London is very important just because it is the pop music hub in Europe. And that's not gonna change anytime soon, particularly, after UK drill became so important. There's just too much momentum in London. And Berlin is also has, a lot, because it has a long history of pop music and rock music.
Yeah.
So Berlin and London are two cities that I think should be on your radar. Paris currently,
Yeah, what about Paris?
I mean, you shouldn't never underestimate the Francophone market, just because, you know, the Francophone countries, they are very passionate about just listening to French music. So it is in itself like, you'd like, if you look at like French speaking musicians, particularly, you know, rappers, you'd be surprised what numbers they pull, because you think there's only so many countries where French is being spoken, but then, you know, they commit to that. So, but Paris is also, you know, obviously Berlin is I sit in Berlin right now. But Paris, you know, I'm through a couple of bigger producers that I'm friends with, relatively well, you know, connected. And London is also fairly easy. It's just that activities in London are, yeah,
I think what I would prefer to do, and I'd love to get your feedback on this, is, you know, go for the undervalued, lesser known scene, which probably is Paris, right? Like, most people have heard Berlin, London. Most people probably don't know what's happening in Paris on the underground, right? And I think it's more intriguing. And there might be some other cities, right, that have the same profile where there's a lot of talent and a lot of interesting things happening, but no one's really exposed them. New York is sort of like that too. Like, I think New York is undervalued in terms of its underground sound. And, you know, London, maybe not. You know, Berlin feels like an underground city to me. Like, I feel like all Berlin music is underground music. And London to a certain extent too. But Paris might surprise people, right? Like, that would be the one that people would be like, oh shit, like, let me just look to see what's happening here because I'm not familiar. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I'm not as often in Paris at the moment as I was last year.
Yeah.
Just because the club I had a residency in just started to ghost me, which I found incredibly surprising. Never experienced that before in my professional life, like with dates, but not with like business partners. But I guess they didn't like what I was doing. That's the explanation. But yeah,
that's different. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not that often there currently, but there's obviously a lot that can be, you know, done remotely. I mean, ultimately, the one thing that's always, you know, necessary, and maybe, you know, because you've now gone through some iterations, is to have the pitch down to artists, you know, because obviously a lot of the artists are still, you know, like need to diversify the ways they make money. They also have, I mean, the one thing that plays into your advantage, which is technically a cultural disadvantage for all of us, is that artists are right now in a very doom and gloom type of situation where AI is already violently abusing them, whether they want it or not. So they're looking at the value of their creations like kind of drowning in a sinkhole, you know? So a lot of people are very discouraged to a point where they think that the shit all money they get from Spotify is about all they can hope for, you know. And even though I'm involved with Subvert and I really love it, it's, you know, like, it's not going to overtake Bandcamp. It's very much an ideological effort than it is a economical one long term. And you've seen the article about Nina Protocol, which
Right.
I mean, I was like dumbfounded by that. I did not expect that. I mean, that is like, that really, really made me even like kind of regret my farewell post to them, because I was like, you guys, what were you up to? Like,
Wait, I didn't see the article. What happened?
Oh, Nina Protocol, in the whole lifetime of Nina Protocol, there was $30,000 worth of transactions. In the whole lifetime of Nina, they literally made $30,000 for artists.
What?
Yes, I can send you. There's actually like a deep dive. Like, there's like a very interesting new analysis type agency company. They've done a really interesting deep dive into Nina. And in their whole existence, they made 30,000. Like, that's all the revenue that the company has ever made. Everything else was just burning venture capital money, probably because they were hoping to get acquired. But ultimately, I can't even imagine, how do you have like 8 people on staff, or how many more they had, and that's all that you manage to do, even after transitioning away from crypto.
Wow.
Having such a community, like they were like, so this was pretty depressing, to be honest, like to see that this is what Nina managed to pull off with the amount of resources they had access to.
Exactly. Meanwhile, I'm here scraping by.
Yeah, you're scraping by, and I've already, so like having the pitch down, to kind of adjust also. I mean, like to get that, so I can also kind of think about the messaging and how that applies, because also you need to understand there's also mentality differences, like the way hip-hop producers go about, move about, make money, and the way, and particularly in the US, and even within the US, probably there's huge differences of how business is conducted in New York versus how it's conducted in Atlanta. And then you have Europe, which is, still in many ways driven by it's more ideological. And in a sense, of course, you have people who just want, want exposure and money, but many artists are like, is this the right thing for me to do if there's like a socio-political kind of issue that I might take with it, or my community might take with it. And so you need obviously to adjust the messaging to that.
Yeah. I mean, I think for us, like what we've come to realize, or what I've come to realize, is that same thing we were saying about world building is important for us to start out with, like, continuously impress what our mission is to create, in this world, like, economic infrastructure that artists can rely on and depend on, right? Like that, we want to see artists win, we want to see artists lead. And I think, what we can really do to help ourselves is just be very clear about the mission, and then that gives context for sort of how we're behaving and how we're acting, right? It's we love art, we love artists, we want to see more artists survive and be able to sustain a career. And we know that the infrastructure today doesn't work. The entire internet's being rewritten right now with AI, and I think, to your point, we see the future that's optimistic for artists, and not pessimistic. We think there's a future ahead that artists win, especially influential artists. So to us, like, we've really gotten over the last, like, since we start talking, re-engage, like, whatever, 6 months ago, gotten really sharp on even who we want. It's the influential producers, the producers with influence whose brand doesn't match their influence, because we're coming out of an attention economy, and that rewarded a certain type of behavior, and it wasn't talent. Talent is not what was rewarded, but I think going forward, that's what will be, and that's the infrastructure that we want to build, that's the platform we want to build, and those are the artists that we want to help.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if we like repeat that part of a conversation that we had a few months ago, but because obviously, since you are interested in acquiring, the content, how do you currently, because obviously there's also now, again, like the kind of catalog business has flared up again, there's like an influx of money into catalogs again, particularly, like not even the big ones, but like kind of the sustainable ones. I don't know if you saw like Duetti's 2025 analysis kind of strategy paper. It's quite interesting. It's like one of the more interesting things that I've read recently on the state of the music business. But how do you, in your conversations, address that with artists who like, if I kind of engage with you? Am I devaluing the worth of my catalog in
No,
case
you're doing the
somebody else?
opposite. Yeah, by working with us, you're actually increasing the value of your entire catalog because we're creating new revenue for you.
That is something that I think, I mean, obviously then you have that argument already down. So I'm quite curious to see, you know, the kind of, yeah.
Yeah. So if you think about, you know, if you think about an artist.
But also what I think would be interesting, particularly to get influential early stage, like influential artists that are early stage in that part of the career, is to build the narrative around how, well, nobody's going to come to acquire your catalog anytime soon. Like, love you, you're amazing, I hope it happens, but Psygnosis will not, you know, come knocking anytime soon. But this is your kind of a way to prepare you for that, or in turn say, you know, this is the kind of like internal clients that, I mean, I don't know if Float has that, but maybe, you know, like talent buyers, you know, hang out at college pitch fields or in third league games here in Germany, you know, to buy some sort of new talent for a soccer team in Florida. That could be Float's role of actually, you know, yes, one part of our business is producers buying this, but actually the real part of our business is the catalog buyers using this as an early signal.
Right.
Don't know if that ever crossed your mind.
Well, it hasn't crossed my mind in terms of catalog buyers, but it has crossed my mind in terms of like making talent visible so that maybe a label signs, right? You know, it's like we are a big NR platform. You know, that is just giving emerging talent visibility and showing the metrics, right? Like we could show who are the most influential producers by whose sounds are being used the most. And so that's data and information that obviously the artist would love to have and know. But also I think, you know, for one, you know, people who are valuing catalog, now I can look at, you know, right now all catalogs value based off Spotify numbers.
Yeah, no.
Now I have to look at Spotify and I got to look at Float. And okay, now, you know, I have this higher revenue number that has given me a better sense for your overall catalog value. Your release stuff's on Spotify, your unreleased sounds are on Float. Combined, you're worth more because you know, you are generating more revenue from your music and your work. And then but ultimately, yeah, I think who could be, and the way I've thought about this in the past is that who would be interested in who we're identifying are the labels. And you know, that's one of the questions that I was getting early on in Float is like, what happens if an artist, you know, comes through Float and then signs with a label? Like, fine, like that's what we want. You know, we want them, you know, we can hopefully guide them towards that so they get a fair deal and they have more leverage and, you know, all that stuff. But ultimately that's not a bad thing for us. Like that's a great thing for us. This is almost like a stepping stone to, you know, something greater.
Okay, well, it would be great, you know, to be able to, obviously the platform has improved since, you know, so that I could, you know, just like kind of dig in again.
Yep.
I'm not sure, you know, like what kind of internal documentation you have right now for like the kind of making the argument.
Yeah.
So I can reflect on that.
I can send you the pitch. I can send you, we have an artist deck that I probably should update. And then I can send you the agreement that I have with Dro, just so you see it. And then, you know, we made some collateral material for him that we could easily, you know, template for you as well. But I think it just gives the salient points on like why work with us, what's the deal structure look like, why this makes sense, who we are, what is our mission. And yeah, it would be great to at least just, you know, even just get your feedback on that.
No, let's do it. I mean, let's do it like because Thursday next week. I mean, I'm not gone when I'm in India and China. It's just that I'm, you know, in between gigs and traveling a fair amount, but I still have a fuck ton of work because I have a festival to curate and stuff like that. So I'll be able to, huh?
I thought you quit that.
No, the CTM festival, no, that's my lifeblood. I
Oh,
would never abandon that festival. That is like
I
it
thought this.
doesn't.
I thought this was the one. Maybe it's another, but there's one you were saying that you spend so much time and effort on, you work so much, and you get paid nothing.
Yes, but I still love doing it.
Okay.
You know, it is still culturally the most I had today a call with Björk's team. You know Björk?
No
Like,
way.
yeah. And I've been trying to get her to the festival for many, many years. Never worked out, just because, you know, she's a very particular artist, and it's just
Man.
never worked out. You know, an artist, she plans like years ahead, and for us
Yeah.
that's not possible. But they basically said, well, you know, you pretty much know that, like, every artist you worked in the past, you were onto them years before, you know, like we basically manage the guy who produced her last album is my friend from Bali, Kas. You know, like we were the first one to bring him out of Indonesia to Europe ever. So they were like, yeah, now it's finally time. So they want us to do her exhibition and to do, you know, an event with her and all that. CTM, I love CTM. It's just stressful and it's an ungrateful job, but culturally, it's the most influential thing in Berlin. You know, and that is like hard to bet. If you look at like the rule of diminishing returns, I've done already enough for the platform that my reputation doesn't grow by being involved anymore. But that's not what I do it. You know, I do it because I find myself in a room with like some really crazy music and some really crazy people, knowing that no one else in the city has enough will to abuse themselves enough to make this happen, you know? So that's why I continue doing it. But I've changed a little bit the rules of engagement I have with the festival.
Got it.
No, but if we can do this, you know, until I leave to Croatia, because I'm doing like a festival stage in Croatia next week. So in the next 7 days, we can talk again. That would be amazing.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll get you some stuff ASAP, and then yeah, we'll get this going.
And I have another question for you, because I meant to contact you about this anyway. But I am basically, I'm not at the point where I'm pitching to CMG yet. You know, Create Media Group. But I was basically, somebody from K7 approached me. You know, K7, I don't know if you know them, like big. K7 is, do you know Kruder and did you ever, when you were a teenager, did you ever get stoned to Kruder and Dorfmeister?
No.
I don't know if you've ever partook in the Devil's Lettuce.
No. What is this?
And I myself also not a smoker, you know, but when I was 15, of course, I did rip a bong or two. And pretty much everyone, you know, our age did that to the sound of the K&D Sessions, which is a album that came out. It's Kruder and Dorfmeister. It's like the kind of down-tempo album in the 90s. K7 is also the record label that published Aphex Twin's Ambient Works Volume 2. And they amassed like a huge catalog of like music. They're a very important label and distributor. And now they got bought by CMG, you know, Create Media Group. Yeah,
Okay.
So because the owner died, and then Universal wanted to buy them, but they didn't want to sell to Universal, so they went for CMG. So they have way more money. And somebody approached me from K7 and was like, you know what, like, I really like what you do. And I was like, well, I really like what I do as well, but I do not have, you know, any platform to take my support for artists further than what I do, which is do an interview, post about them, and then watch them as they sail off into a successful career. If I would have had a label 20 years ago and have had a release with every artist that I was bigging up, I wouldn't have to work now anymore, because I would sit on a catalog worth millions, you know?
Exactly.
So I'm looking for a strategic partner for a music label.
Bruh, you're looking.
And they were like, well, that's funny, because we are looking for somebody to helps us to build like a more new talent type of thing. But K7 ultimately, they're very traditional, and they're Berlin based. They're great as distributor, you know, they're great label managers, but they are like, you know, a facilitator before, you know, like they sit in between the real money and the real platforms, and they're Kona CMG. And what I was thinking, I can send you my white paper. Requires really like that's K7 want me to run a label for them, which is great. But what I want to run is a little bit more complex and requires more kind of a different strategic partner. And I think CMG could be one of a partner like that, because there's like 4 elements that are distinct. It's like a media company, like kind of influencer type of music influencer type of thing. And so yeah, like CMG is somebody I want to pitch to, but there's also other entities that I might be able to pitch to, you know, there's money for that. And I of course wanted, because, you know, one thing that I do not know is money in any way. I do have an advisor, Dima, who's really good at these financial things. So you think the two of you would kick it off. But I wanted to ask you if you potentially, if there will ever be a deck, I could drop your name as one of my advisors for that, with your background in music, but also in investment banking. If I were, because I cannot with confidence approach a group like CMG and be like, give me money, because if I were a CMG manager, I would not give me money, because I'm very obviously not equipped to handle a 7-figure investment, you know. Right. But having some people like you,
I'm in. Yeah.
I was also considering to ask Jordan, you know, Minashi. Right. I have Ollie, who's the manager of Fret again, and Skrillex. He's like on board for doing that. So I do have, you know, like a couple of senior advisors who might not quite understand the culture that I represent, but understand how to make sure that it might, you know, be well funded.
Yeah. Look, I'm down to be included. I'm down to look at the pitch. Mm-hmm. I think it, you know, look, I trust you as a executor of culture and taste that will do it at the highest standard, you know, like no doubt. And if CMG doesn't want it, you know, I think there's a pitch we can make to others. And I think, you know, this is potentially something we could build, you know, together too. I think that'd be really, really exciting and interesting. But yeah, definitely include me. Yeah.
I'll send you that. I mean, it's an essay more than anything currently, but cool. I'll send it to you. And then, you know, next week when we talk, we can you know, kick key on that as well.
All right, cool. All right, Michail. Well, I'll let you go. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for the patience, you know, because I know how frustrating it sometimes can be when people just poof.
Oh, I was going to ask you, whatever happened with Davey and SoundCloud? Anything?
Oh, yeah, I actually wanted to ask you about that. So I spoke to Davey. She was incredibly excited, you know, like was like, oh my God, you're exactly what we need. Handed me down to her underling, you know, who said the same thing. Oh my God, this is like so interesting. You're exactly what we need. We need to figure out a way how to work together. Handed me down to his underling, who was like, oh my God, you're so exciting. I love what you do. I have so many ideas. We need to find a way how to work together. I'm gonna, you know, like make sure that we speak next week again. And since then, nada. Like I followed up 3 times very nicely, you know, with enough time in between, because I don't want to be appearing needy, but you know, like waited 2 weeks, waited another 2 weeks, you know, and the third time is like when I'm like, I can't, you know, I'm stupid. But one thing that I noticed after I started to speak to Davey's underlings, SoundCloud did start a content series of artist interviews, the first one of which had the copy catching up with. I did notice that. Might be a coincidence.
Yeah.
But it is, you know, like given the fact that we were talking about social media strategy, and they might have looked at my content.
You influenced them, no doubt. You know,
yeah, I definitely, but you know, like so whoever got influenced by me got paid to be influenced, you know, whereas I'm sitting here, you know, twiddling my fucking thumbs. So I thought about writing Devi, not like in a sense like, yo, actually your team ignores me. It's not, I think, a good position to take. I wanted to reach out to her about the community radio index, because I'm already talking to Mixcloud, because the archives of the archives are distributed between 3 platforms: YouTube, Mixcloud and SoundCloud. YouTube doesn't give a flying fuck, you know, already tried to speak to them. They are like, they don't do any support like that for something as small as that. Mixcloud proactively reached out. I'm talking to them next week. And SoundCloud, I thought about talking to Debbie, even though this is not their core business, but she might be appreciative. That was like the only way that I thought I could re-up the conversation. But I felt a bit frustration because everybody's telling me how amazing my insights are. And then, you know, it's just like, I mean, I understand it's an organization, they have other goals and all that. But I think it's a thrown away opportunity for them. And it's, you know, like, I mean, not that I'm jealous lover, like, they don't know how good, she doesn't know how good she could have it with me, but I genuinely think, you know, they could profit massively.
I do too. No, that's why, I mean, I agree. So we just went to her house for brunch last weekend. And I can, they're in Hawaii right now, maybe.
Oh, amazing.
Are they back? No, they're there. They left Friday, so they're there this week. So when she comes back, I will I'll hit her and say, hey,
okay, well then I'll wait with my outreach regarding the community radio index for a few days. The guy I was talking to is like the last underling. It's such a mean way to describe
I'll put you
people.
back to Davey. Yeah,
it's like a guy called Jordan, like he's the one that went poof on me.
Okay. All right.
And I don't know him, but I don't know why, because I gave him some sick music recommendations that he was really into because he's a punk person. So I like opened up the world of Indonesian punk to him. And I thought that meant something, but apparently not so.
Oh man, I love you so much. You're so funny. You're literally like one of the funniest people I know.
I would love to, you know, like, and I would love like if we could kick it in person at some point. I just don't see myself coming to the US anytime soon, just as I don't have a reason yet. And you, I don't think will be.
I'm gonna try to make ADE this year.
I'm very, I missed the deadline of suggesting my own topics, so just like side questing too hard. But I'm very likely gonna host more than one thing this year for them, like because they really liked what I did last year with DJG, so they wanted to book me for a few more hosting activities.
Okay.
So I most certainly will be at ADE, and I can recommend to. It's a good place to dip your toes into Europe. It's more relevant than it used to be.
Amsterdam could be another city, maybe instead of Paris. We already have
Amsterdam. I think Amsterdam is even more exciting because right now, like the first person that I'm thinking about is like one of the artists that I thought I would approach that is a young producer called Tino, TNO. He's Surinamese Dutch, and that kid was like basically, well, you know, he was sitting on 75 tracks that he was just like, you know what, they're just sitting there. Releasing it with labels will just take too much time. I have too much creative energy, already moved on with my, you know, what I do. So he just released it as a Bandcamp download. I bought it, you know, I have 75 Tino tracks on my hard drive, most of which I'll never be able to play.
Wow.
But having said that, there's a couple of producers right now in Amsterdam that just run circles around the rest of Europe in terms of the output.
Yeah, I'm down for Amsterdam. Maybe that's what we do. Focus there. That'd be sick.
The most also. It's Amsterdam is quiet, and there's also a lot of very capable people that I'm very intimately familiar with, who are great producers with high enough of a profile, but also like Amsterdam. You know, like Amsterdam was like basically the second selection city. You know, like when selection started, like you had the kind of LA crew, and then you had Amsterdam, which at that time like defined the selection aesthetic like no other city, just because some of the DJs from the selection universe all came from Amsterdam, and that now kind of continues to
amazing
inform the city.
I did not know that like selection had that connection to Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, that's good to know. And I'm glad. Yeah, I mean, Amsterdam has been high on my list. I love Amsterdam. I've loved going to ADE. I've loved getting to understand how robust the underground scene is there, and sort of institutionalized. I know a lot of artists that move there just for that. We have an artist, one of my friends is a DJ from DC that moved to Amsterdam, live there full time now. We have probably 3 or 4 members on float from Amsterdam. So
yeah, it's a great city.
That
It's a bit too expensive, but it's just, like AD, like one of the issues is like AD, I only do AD when they pay me to do it, because it's just like AD is actually pricing themselves out of an audience. That's like their main issue. That a lot of music professionals, like, we would love to go there, but we can't pay 280 euros a night for a 1-star Holiday Inn by the airport, because that's the cheapest thing during ADE. So
That's
they skip
crazy.
it.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy.
But beyond that, it's a good place to start. Okay, I talk to you next week. Please slide into my inbox with decks or my WhatsApp messages with decks and information.
Got you. All right, man. We'll talk next Tuesday.
My friend. Yeah,
you too.
Soon. Bye.
See ya. Peace.